you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. Today is Sunday, November 7th, 2010. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Don Baker. Welcome back.
Hey,
it's been like forever
since you... It's been forever. I hosted once, but it's been several months since I've co-hosted.
And so, for those of you who know, that means we'll have actually something to talk about and won't jump directly to calls. Although this is a live call-in television program, we'll have the number up for you like virtually right away. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. For more information about the ACA, you can visit our website, www.atheist-community.org. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast, which may become weekly as we actually get the time to do it. But we did a show yesterday. It's called The Nonprofits. For more information, you can go to nonprofitsradio.com. That's P-R-O-P-H-E-T-S. And we had a special guest caller yesterday, Leo Behe, the son of Michael Behe, called in and talked about it. He's recently come out as an atheist, and so we had a good conversation with him. We thank him for calling into the show. And then we talked about a lot of news items because we have a new kind of intern on the Nonprofits, and she's just been phenomenal at gathering news stories for us to talk about. So. And who knows, you may see her as an intern around the Atheist Experience as well. After the show is over, we get together for dinner at Threadgills at 301 West Riverside Drive. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come down. You don't have to be a member to attend any of our events. And among the other events, including the Atheist Happy Hour on Thursdays, there's also a lecture series the first Sunday of every month at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe, beginning at 12:15. If you see a notice on Facebook or something that says it's at 1 o'clock, that's wrong. It started at 12:15. And today we had a friend of mine who used to be the religion reporter for the Austin American Statesman, Eileen Flynn DeLeau, come on down and talk to us about being a religion reporter and a little bit about the media and their issues with representing atheism, fairly or at all. So we had a really good time with that. And the last actual announcement that I need to make is that on Tuesday, November 16th at 7 p.m. At the UMBC University Center Ballroom, I'll be having a debate on the source of human morality. We'll get a little something posted up at the website probably this week. I've already posted about it on Facebook, and I know that the student group, both the secular, it's an interfaith organization thing between the Secular Student Alliance, and then there's an Orthodox group that's putting up the other presenter. And I've been informed that the moderator for the debate is going to be John Shook from CFI. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll get more information posted up online. I want to bring somebody up here today, though, because I've been doing the show for about 5 years and some change or something like that. The show's actually been on for about 13 years. The group's been around for 11 or 12. One of the guys who has been one of the main producers on this show longer than I've been involved with it is leaving Austin for another job. And since we haven't had a chance to actually do anything super special for him, I wanted to bring him out so that you can see Joe. This is Joe Rhodes, who has done marvelous stuff back in the studio, in the smaller studio, and out here at the big one. I can't possibly thank you enough. I am incredibly sad that you're leaving.
Me too.
I hope we can. He does tons of stuff with regard to the ACA website and everything, but we do wish you much luck and prosperous time up in the Northwest. So.
Right.
Thanks very much.
So Joe's going to Portland. Yay. We've got a big studio audience, too, today, which is good.
That's
maybe we can buy him a taco or something after dinner.
These guys work it's just insanely hard because the show goes on the air at 4:30. They're here at 3 or 3:30 to do all the behind-the-scenes setup of the equipment, the cameras, the lights.
Training, and
I just
everything
show
else,
up and talk. And so we'll go ahead and get the telephone number posted up right now so we can queue up some callers. But in the meantime, Don's got stuff he wants to talk about.
A short presentation. I'll try to make it short today. A couple months ago when I was on as a co-host, I opened up this topic of buzzwords of ignorance, or things that you hear in often political discourse. And today I want to talk about the Christian nation buzzword of ignorance. And what I mean by this is words used because of their emotional connotation, where the speaker is relying on the assumed ignorance of the audience who is being manipulated by that speaker. And these words are usually used for propaganda purposes or political purposes. And the last time I talked about the notion of the Judeo-Christian values, that sort of thing. And this is kind of a closely related topic where we're talking about the founding of the nation and whether this really is a Christian nation or not. And the fact is, it's not a Christian nation. There are a lot of Christians in the United States, a majority. But that doesn't make it a Christian nation. We're an explicitly secular nation with a strong separation of church and state in our Constitution and our founding documents. And there are people chipping away at that sort of thing, but it's not a Christian nation.
It's right there in the First Amendment, despite what Christine O'Donnell thinks.
Right, right. So we'll hit on that at some point here. So the purpose of this myth, I think, is like an ego stroke for Christians. It's sort of saying that Christians have a special place. You get to railroad your religion through when other people don't get to. Often it's used in pandering for votes, where political candidates will say, "Oh, we're a Christian nation, and I'm Christian, so vote for me." And it's really sort of a form of Christian imperialism, where it's like an explicit propaganda campaign to promote Christianity in the greater culture. And as we'll see, it's often done at the expense of truth. So historically, I think it would be worth mentioning the fact that we had this Red Scare in the 50s, when the Cold War, and there was a lot of trouble with the U.S. and Russia, and especially after World War II. And there needed to be a way of distinguishing the United States from Russia. And they hit upon this propaganda idea that, oh, well, we believe in God, and those Russians are those atheist communists, and that's how we're going to do it. And so there really was a propaganda campaign at that time that unfortunately ran the name of atheism through the mud and made it very, very difficult for people who didn't believe to be considered patriots. And it was a kind of unfortunate time, I think. You know, today we're rehabilitating the word atheism. None of the atheists I know are into communism. It's a ridiculous association as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, but this propaganda campaign has continued on in recent years, and it's especially true, I think, since the rise of the religious right in the Republican Party. You see it quite a bit, and it's still going on today. And it's being promoted by a bunch of deceptive tactics. And I wanted to hit on a few of those tactics and talk about some examples of what those were, and then we'll wrap up. So one of the tactics they use is they put words in dead people's mouths. And this reminds me so much of these fake deathbed conversions that people supposedly had, where, on their deathbed they converted to Christianity.
As if that would matter.
Well, as if that would matter, but also, you know, they're not around they're dead, so they can't come around and you know, fix the lie. So what you see is we see a lot of fake founders quotes, founding fathers, that they're, you know, overtly Christian, these sorts of things. And I think one of the big sources of these fake quotes is a guy by the name of David Barton, who is rather infamous here in Texas and across the nation. He is a political operative with the Republican Party. He's also a reverend, and I think he makes most of his money by being a propagandist. He creates these lies about Christianity and promotes them and makes money selling this stuff. So that's you know, he's pretty famous, I think, for making up false quotes, and you can look on the internet and find those. Another example is inflating the importance of religious quotes. You know, the Christian nation folks are very fond of finding finding quotes where somebody in political power said something nice about Christianity, as if that really means anything. We have a lot of Christians that have been in power over the years, and a lot of non-Christians, and if somebody said something nice about Christianity or belief in God, it doesn't necessarily mean we're a Christian nation. But there's this idea that these quotes are somehow significant when they're really not. Another example is suppressing disconfirming evidence. So, for example, we have one of the main things that atheists like to bring up is the Treaty of Tripoli, where in the 1796, the U.S. government, the brand new U.S. government, actually had a treaty with the country of Tripoli and said that the government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. And this was, I believe, unanimously signed by the Congress of that time. And if you really want to say that this is a Christian nation, boy, you really need to answer to this particular thing. But often you'll find that people are promoting the Christian nation idea. Will skip right over this, or they'll skip right over the fact that the Constitution, I think it's Article 6, has an explicit ban on religious tests of public office. This is getting back to our secular church-state separation idea, or the First Amendment that sort of bans government involvement in religion. These things are explicit in the Constitution, and people like to, kind of hide out and pretend that those aren't there. Another tactic is outright lies. There's the mythology that prayer was needed at the Constitutional Convention, and our nation was saved by prayer there, and it's just false. There's the claim that the U.S. laws were based on the Ten Commandments, and this claim is so old that even Jefferson himself had to dispel it in a letter to Thomas Cooper in 1814. And the answer there is that the U.S. laws, the core laws, came from British common law, which was in place long before Christianity made it into Britain. So, the key laws of not killing and not stealing and these sorts of things are that old that they predated Christianity's involvement in that area of the world. Anyway, so this is just an outright lie. Another tactic they use to promote the Christian nation idea is equivocation, and you see this a lot in the notion of God. And a lot of the a lot of the founders were deists, so they believe in a God that a God of nature, or the God that sort of created the universe, but then set it loose and let it run. And it's a very different notion of God than the Christian God of somebody you pray to and interact with and get favors from, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of equivocation of these two things. These are two very different religious concepts, but a lot of Christians would want to claim the deists as Bible-believing Christians, when many of them spoke out vociferously against the Bible and the Christian religion. And among those are Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and Adams and Madison were some of the big ones that really, Thomas Paine, of course. So a lot of those founders, really sort of had it out for Christianity, or didn't believe in it. Yet they built a nation that tolerated that, and tolerated those religious beliefs. Another example of equivocation is in the First Amendment and how it's interpreted. A lot of people will say, oh, well, the First Amendment prohibits the establishment of religion, but in actuality it prevents an establishment of religion. And the founders chose their words carefully. They really sort of knew what they were doing, with possible exception of the Second Amendment, which was very ambiguous. But the First Amendment is quite clear that the U.S. government is not to be creating an establishment of religion, so it's not supposed to be endorsing religion of any sort. Another equivocation is people will say, oh, well, this wall of separation of church and state really means that the government's not supposed to mess with the religion. It's really a one-way magic trapdoor thing.
Yeah.
And
it's the first wall I've heard of that actually works that way. But
yeah. And it's not like these founders were well-educated people. If they knew what a trap door was, they could have used that terminology. I mean, a wall is not semi-permeable in one direction. Anyway, it's just ridiculous. Finally, another way is myth-making. Or creating stories about that sort of associate sort of a biblical narrative with the narrative of the country, and you see that, for example, with conflating of Moses and George Washington, and the idea is that Washington was the United States' Moses, and he came down and he revealed the God's law or whatever and God's favor to the great nation and all this, and a lot of the Christian nation folks want to turn Washington into this big Bible believer, but Washington, I think, of all the founders, was one of the most private about his religious beliefs, and I think he'd be turning over in his grave if he could, about being used as a shill for somebody's religion. It's very likely he was a deist, like Franklin and Jefferson and many of the other founders. He never took communion. He never spoke about Jesus or the Christian side of things. And
it's generally not fair to I wouldn't think to lump Washington in as a deist. While he was more private about his religion, there are examples from his own writing of him saying that he identifies as a Christian, etc.
Okay. Okay.
Now, whether how much of that is lip service or not, but I have to go by, if you say this is what you are, okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have no reason to, if Don tells me he's an atheist, I'm going to accept him at his word. Why would I do anything different?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, so I've listed a whole bunch of ways in which Christians promote this Christian nation myth, and in ways that are, I think, deceptive and dishonest. And many Christians have made great contributions to the United States. Why is that not enough? Why is there a need to lie? And if you have an answer to that, give us a call. My answer is that Christianity needs lies to promote it, because it's really kind of an awful religion, and it needs lies to gloss over its failings. Anyway, so there's my presentation. How did I do on time?
You did great on time.
I did great.
It's like 12 minutes or so.
Good. We'll leave a lot of time for callers. We have full lines.
Yeah, as a reminder, the show is no longer 90 minutes. It's now cut down to an hour. And because of that, we're going to try to move through calls at a decent pace. So if you can, if you do get through, we're up to 4 lines instead of 3, but they're full already. If you do get through, please try to get to the point of what you're saying. I don't want to rush people, but if you meander around for a long time, we are going to kind of steer you back on course in order to avoid wasting too much time.
No circular arguments.
And I won't waste any more time. We'll just go right to calls right now. We got Vito in Tallahassee. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
I'll just get right to the point then. I'm an atheist. I was born into a Catholic household, like so many others. And at around 13 or so, I began to have differing views, and I became an agnostic and eventually an atheist. Early on, my parents were separated, and I lived with my mother. And my father, who I didn't see very often, we would have, these little mini debates about theology, like most people do, or most children do when they deconvert like that. Mm-hmm. But the main problem is he told me that he didn't believe me. He thought that I was just kind of saying that to be like a rebel. And that belief of his has kind of persisted to today, and I'm 18 now. And
so he's playing denial games with you? Is that what it is? It's denial on his part?
Yeah, he actually told me maybe a few months ago that I'm actually lying to him when I say that I'm an atheist. Not that he doesn't agree with atheism in general, but that he actually thinks that I'm just lying when I am a Christian. And I mean, it's been a tremendous wedge in me having a relationship with my father.
Sure.
And I mean, I'm sorry if this isn't really on topic, but I just wanted to know, if you guys had maybe even a little bit of advice as to how I could at least let him know that I'm not just kind of trying to troll him, you know what I mean? Because he really honestly believes that.
I think it's a defense mechanism on his part. You're worried about, how this, he thinks you're lying, and you're worried about how this affects your relationship. And I think if he believed you were telling the truth, it might affect the relationship even more severely than it currently does. Right now, he's probably, and I'm just guessing, he's probably struggling with trying to understand how anybody could hold this position, let alone, his own kid. And it's a lot easier for parents to simply think that these things are fads, that you are rebelling, that you're not being honest about it. I don't know that I would do too much. I mean, my first instinct was like, well, are you lying when you tell me you're a Christian? Are you just going along to get along? But I don't know that I'd do that either. I think the best thing that you can do is just keep being who you are, and keep being honest. And eventually, I mean, it might take a while, but I'm pretty sure if you maintain this position and honesty and everything, that eventually he's going to come around and say, you know what, I guess he's not lying. He really doesn't believe. But I think the thing you have to do is realize that this is your dad's problem, not yours. This is him having difficulty coming to grips with reality, which I would argue as a theist, there's already this problem of coming to grips with reality, or coming to understand why it is that people reject these God claims that other people accept. I wish I had, you can't possibly convince somebody that you're not lying about what you feel or what you believe. It's like he's accusing you of lying about your favorite color type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I hear some emotion in your voice too, and it could be that he's pushing your buttons because he feels hurt. So I would recommend that you try to detach your emotions from this thing, and not let him get your goat with this, right? In many ways, it may not matter what he says. I think the deeper issue is that he's sort of calling you a liar. I think that's the more serious issue, and I think you ought to defend yourself on that.
Yeah.
But don't be a punching bag, and don't play into the game. Pull yourself out of the game. Don't give him so much power. It would be my advice.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are both right. Thanks. I really appreciate it. You guys both made me feel better.
Oh, good.
Well, good. And good luck with that. I mean,
and reach out to an atheist community in your area if you can.
As a matter of fact, I was looking into that just recently because I've lived in a small town my whole life. So now that I'm in a place with more population, it's like I might actually have a chance to go to meetups like that if I could find one.
Yeah, I would.
It's not that hard to
that.
start one. Also, believe it or not, it's really pretty easy these days, especially with the internet and atheist meetup and these sorts of things. Having a support system would help you a lot, and that advice goes to a lot of folks that are maybe out in little off the beaten path places. You can reach out to other people that have a like mind, and I think that's one of the big successes of our group here is we have a community of folks and a lot of people that get along pretty well and think alike.
I think Don hit a really important thing in noting that this accusation of lying is probably the more serious thing. And while I do think it's a defense mechanism on your dad's part, that might be the way to go in further conversations, rather than going round and round and round about the religion thing. Go have a conversation about the idea that he thinks that you're just lying. Why does he think that? What reason does he have for you to do that? And explain to him how that makes you feel, that he thinks you're lying about something that, what would it feel like for him if when he told you he was a Christian, you just assumed he was lying and went on about it? I mean, this is an attack on your character that goes beyond any disagreement about the existence of gods or pixies or whatever.
Yeah, it's hurtful.
Yeah.
So we really hope things work out for you. And hey, if you can't find a group in your area, you can always start one. But also feel free to give us a call back and let us know how things are going for you.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Sure.
Good luck with the rest of the show.
Thanks.
Sure. Appreciate it. As a reminder, after the show's over, we get together for dinner at Threadgill's, 301 West Riverside Drive. I know in an hour-long show I'm going to forget to say that, so I wanted to get it in as soon as I remembered it. We've got Eric in Seattle. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Matt?
I'm good.
Good. Thanks for having me on the show. So I recently got into a debate with a presuppositionalist Christian, and once he got through the regular banter of, well, how do you justify the validity of the assumptions you make? I just wanted to share, kind of what my approach was after listening to your debate with Matt Slick, which I think you handled it very well, by the way.
Thanks.
But what I did was basically just smoke out that his entire worldview was based upon the presupposition of the Christian conception of God, and that presupposition was true. And then I went about formally refuting the nature of the Christian conception of God, the eternal contradictions of omni-traits, eternality, mortality, and immortality simultaneously, and basically just concluded that you can't validate logic if your position can't withstand the validity of logical objections that you claim to be valid.
Yeah, it is a curiosity that the people who adopt this particular type of Christian view simultaneously want to believe in something that defies logic and then make a logical argument for it as if it's the end-all be-all. They've knocked their own legs out from underneath them when they start doing that.
Right, and I listened to some other debates that Matt Slick had with other well-informed atheists, and just found that he's just a really intellectually dishonest sophist, and that but that nobody seems to actually catch this about the argument, and that's kind of why I wanted to just call and bounce it off of you, having a philosophical background and stuff, like just to kind of maybe.
Yeah, the biggest reason I didn't go down any kind of route like that, apart from not immediately thinking of it, is that I wanted to address his argument on its own terms, because where other atheists had objected to like premise 1 or premise 2, I was willing to grant those to get to the critical flaws a little further along. So there's lots of different tactics you can take with that. I like if you're having kind of an armchair discussion with somebody who brings up an argument like this, I like kind of circumventing it by going around to what their presuppositions actually are. And one of the things that I pointed out, and we're not going to spend any time on tag today, certainly not in the shortened format. And for those who don't know, tag is the transcendental argument for the existence of God. But one of the things that I pointed out, and in a conversation with John Loftus at the Texas Free Thought Convention, is I don't think there's a single person on the face of the earth that has found Christianity because of the transcendental argument for the existence of God. I think this is an argument that they come up with post hoc because they think it's going to convince somebody else. I don't want to know what you think is going to convince me. I want to know what convinced you. Because if you are convinced for really bad reasons, then you're never going to be able to convince me. But if you're convinced for good reasons, now we can actually talk about something. So it's when theists and Christians and whoever call the show, I don't want to hear what their best fancy argument is. I don't want them to hear them spewing, Alvin Plantinga's modal ontological argument or whatever, because that's not what convinced them. And people, by and large, are convinced for very bad reasons and often emotional reasons. And I think that speaks volumes. And the fact that they're dancing around trying to come up with logical arguments for something that is, in many cases, as you point out, completely illogical, in defiance of rationale and reason, I just find that absurd. And it's, I don't know, it's like saying, I love you, and here's the math that proves it. It's dumb.
Right. I think the pith of it is that they can't rationally defend a position of faith with reason, so they attack reason instead.
Yeah.
And,
all right. Well, power to you, Eric. It sounds like you're making some sophisticated debates here and getting into the meat of the matter.
Yeah, just trying to help the movement the best I can as a working guy. I just had a quick question though. Also, like when he discussed with you, he had said that logic was transcendent, and I would actually disagree with that, and just wanted to bounce off why I think so and what you think about that.
Matt and I have actually had a debate about that.
We disagree, but I'm going with the definition of transcendent.
We both think tag is awful.
So what was that?
We both think tag is an awful argument.
Just for different reasons.
Different reasons.
Okay, so you don't.
It would be better, Eric. It would be better if you just email me.
Okay.
And I'll be happy to consider that and talk about it. But there are people who already look like they're in pain in the studio, and I don't want to put them through anymore.
All right, okay. All right, okay.
Tag and
All right,
good
thanks for
TV
your
are
time.
kind of mutually exclusive.
I appreciate the fact that you, like me, have an interest in this, and we're a bit, sadistic in our philosophy. But we're going to go ahead and move on to other calls. So I appreciate it, Eric.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, it's the deeply philosophical arguments, and the fact that Don and I don't agree on one aspect of this demonstrates that there's a lot of room for people to be wrong.
So you say
That's so much more fun when they don't show the wide shot. So you were supposed to see his pained expression.
Oh boy, you got me there.
All right, we won't go down that road today. We have Alejandro in Atlanta. How are you?
Hi, how you guys doing?
Did Lady Gaga write the song about you?
Yes, she did.
Awesome.
Basically, I'm just calling because I have a couple of things that really helped me abandon this religion that I have for 20-something years.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, what I thought was, if God sends bad people to hell and good people to heaven, He's sending people to hell to be punished by the devil. So what are they, partners? I mean, it seems to me that if the devil was banished into hell by God, then why is he out there helping God? And then I thought, well, maybe the devil's doing God's will, and then I thought, well, if he's doing God's will, then is God's will also to have the devil go around hiding all these fossils and doing all these things to trick us?
Yeah.
Yep. The more you ask, the less sense it makes.
And actually, I mean, I know there are Christians sitting out there who are, what you just said is like fingernails on a chalkboard, because there's so many different views doctrinally about God and devils and heaven and hell that you're right from your initial statement of God sends good people to heaven and bad people to hell.
Not everybody
that doesn't
buys that.
match. That doesn't even match the majority of Christian doctrine. But the thing is, you hit on a point that you can focus on that sets all the rest of that aside, because by and large, Christians are convinced that everything happens according to God's plan, including the things that people would attribute to the devil or Satan or whatever else. And then you can go right back to the Bible, where you can talk about the fact that God and the devil had a little kind of friendly wager about how best to whether or not Job would stand up to these poking and prodding, and that Lucifer is the accuser of mankind. And there's this grand mythology that not all sects actually agree on about the fall, and where, so there are some that would profess that Earth is Satan's realm and he's in control here, which doesn't avoid the problem of, okay, if there's a God and it's good and loving and benevolent, why on earth would he put us in this place that's supposedly under Satan's control? There's a million different ways to go about this, but the big thing is to hit them right at the beginning to say, is there anything that could happen that does not match God's plan? And as long as they acknowledge that there's nothing that could happen that is in defiance of God's plan, then number one, you're no longer responsible for the fact that you don't believe or buy this nonsense. And number two, God is ultimately responsible for everything if it's his plan. And you just can't get around that.
And if he's not in control, he's not omnipotent.
Yeah.
Right.
Or he's voluntarily giving up, I could have control, but yeah.
That whole idea was pretty much exactly what made me leave Christianity, because I found the idea of people being sent to hell ridiculous. I mean, even if somebody like Hitler is being sent to hell, God knew at the moment that he created Hitler that he was going to do all those things and he was going to spend eternity in hell. So, why is he creating people just for the sole purpose of punishing them for eternity,
Yeah, and it's actually worse than that. The idea that and I've used this line of question before, if somebody believes that there is a God who created the universe, did he know everything that would ever happen? Was he truly omniscient in that he knew everything that would ever happen throughout the course of this universe? If that's the case, and the next question is, did he have choices about what sort of universe to make? Because if he chose between this universe and an alternate universe, knowing what would happen, then he has dictated the course of all events, which means he knowingly picked the universe where I would stop being a Christian instead of the universe where I remained a Christian. So he has actually, by that decision, violated anything remotely like free will and predestined me to hell. If they think that God had no choice in how to create the universe, but knew that it was going to happen, then why did he create a universe at all? Wouldn't this be the instantiation of immense suffering for the vast majority of people who need not even exist? Why would this God create anything at all? Is he deficient? Did he need to do this? Was he incomplete in his existence? They're all really
it's contradictions all the way
questions. Down. Yeah.
My family has been going crazy after I came out as an atheist. Like, all of my family has just been, calling me nonstop to talk to me about Jesus. And every time I have a conversation with them, I try to explain them logically why I reject all these things. Because after I had all these thoughts, I began to actually look into other reasons, and I started watching your show and all these things. And my family, every time I bring up the Old Testament or anything like that, they just feel cornered, and they always try to change the subject, and they try to talk to me about Jesus, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, it's like they want to forget.
That's why they don't like us atheists very much.
Well, but that's the Old Testament. Jesus came and made everything better. But wait, isn't Jesus God? So was God have some kind of illness where he was this weird evil tyrant in the past, and then he came along and decided to love everybody and doom them to hell forever in the process? It's nuts.
Candy coating, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Like my mom says, she's like, yeah, Jesus came, died for our sins, and opened the gates of heaven. And I was like, yeah, he opened the gates of hell too.
Yeah. Put an open for business sign on both of them. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot for calling.
Thank you.
Yep. Good luck.
That's a weird sound at the end of that call. It's like paper rustling or a toilet flushing or.
It sounded to me like he was guzzling a martini or something.
Well, good for you. It's Sunday afternoon. What else are you going to do? We got Kevin in Carlsbad. How are you?
Hi, Don and Matt. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I am just fine. I've been catching your videos on YouTube. That's how I found out about you. And today's the first time I tried getting on the internet and streaming down to watch you. And I thought
awesome.
I'd call in. So
is it working?
Yeah, it is. It's about. Matter of fact, I'm in the other room away from my computer because there's about a 20-second lag. What you see.
Oh, it's very distracting, isn't it?
Yeah,
so good for you for stepping away.
Watching, so
thank you.
Here talking. So.
Thank you very much for going to the other room. And do you know why it's working? It's working because we have people like Joe Rhodes who busted his ass for years to make this show better. And so I'm going to keep thanking Joe over
folks
and over.
back there. So
and the other folks in the studio, Stephen, Frank, and Shelley, etc.
I was just going to say it's God's will that it's working. So.
It's working because it says in the New Testament that wherever any two Christians get together and ask for something in God's name, it'll be granted. So clearly, no two Christians have gotten together to pray that this show goes away.
Although we do have our share of technical difficulties.
Well, the devil, he's in there too.
Right.
Well, listen, reason why I'm calling, I kind of wanted to just get your take on this or your opinion on this. And first of all, are you? I'm sure you probably are. You've heard of Pat Condell and familiar with him?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because I recently discovered his videos on YouTube, and boy, when I first started watching, I couldn't get enough. I just watched one after another. I thought, my God, this guy is saying everything.
He's got great rants, doesn't he? Yep.
Yeah, he does, and rant is what he does. But boy, he is good. But anyway, what the reason why I called is I'm a member of a very, very small minority, I believe, and that is the conservative atheists. And the problem that I see is that being the conservative, I feel that the religious people are damaging conservatism, and in so doing, I feel that they're really doing this country a disservice. I don't understand. There is no, in my mind, there's no link between conservative beliefs of constitutional, strict adherence to the Constitution and financial responsibility and so on and so forth, these things that conservatives hold dear. There's no tie-in between that and religion, and yet the unfortunate thing is that in a lot of cases conservatism is being treated, it's being, it's like throwing the baby out with the bath because of this link to religion. And
now, would you say that you're socially conservative or fiscally conservative or both, or?
Fiscally conservative and socially pretty libertarian. I favor. I think the drug problem could be solved by the legalization of drugs, and there's got to be some control to it, and perhaps people that are addicted, they would get prescriptions from doctors. But I'm against a lot of the gay bashing and stuff that goes on. Although I feel with gays and lesbians, I'm not real 100% in agreement with them, simply because a lot of them have a liberal agenda too that mixes in with their rights that they're trying to fight for. So
well, I think these divisions are evolving in our country, and with the Reagan era, there was this strong association with the Republican Party and Christianity, and I think it was a negative both for our country and for the Republican Party. I think you're seeing another restructuring going on with this Tea Party thing. I think that it's the beginnings of another shakeout, and it may be that this is a time where real conservatives can take back the party, or create a new party, or do something in order to gather together and bring some sanity back. I think we really need that as a country. I think having a good debate about particular issues is a healthy thing, a good thing. Let's decide things based on facts and these sorts of things. Let's get rid of all this this vitriol and just wacky decision making that's going on, vilifying people. So you have a chance, I think, to be part of that. And there are people in our group, I think, that are similar to you as far as their viewpoints, and are very frustrated with the Republican Party as it is now. And roll up your sleeves and see about fixing it.
I think part of the problem is this linking. The reason that I had to ask you if you were fiscally conservative versus socially conservative is that we've used conservative as a label for too many things. It doesn't really tell us anything at all about the individual, because one could be fiscally liberal and socially conservative, and one could be fiscally conservative and socially liberal and still call themselves, a conservative, because that's why I have to ask. And so I think, you're certainly not alone. There are within our group and other groups, people associated with all different parties, Democrat, Republican, Green, Libertarian, Socialist, whatever. And so there are many in those different categories that would identify as fiscally conservative. The problem is that because the world operates on money, there's been this linking of fiscal conservatism with the social conservatism, and it's become the louder voice.
Right.
And I don't know what to tell you other than what Don said about continue to work, and maybe as these things change, we'll find better labels and categories to put ourselves in. But what's happened, I think, in part, is that some people who would have normally identified as perhaps Republican have shifted to Libertarian, and some people who would have identified as Democrat have shifted to Libertarian, and then they've farmed out to other parties. And I've completely flip-flopped, whereas once upon a time I would have been both fiscally and socially conservative. I'm now fiscally moderate and socially liberal, like ultra-liberal. Although I'm not in favor of legalizing cannibalism or anything, but which is why I can't be a libertarian.
No, I think you're right. Libertarian seems to be that seems to be a growing movement, and I think maybe people like myself are starting to move in that direction. And
I think there are a lot of very frustrated people. I mean, this is a religion show, so I don't know how much we should talk about politics, but I think there are a lot of people frustrated in the United States, and hopefully there'll be a shakeout for the better soon.
And I'm no historian, so I may actually get this wrong, but my suspicion, based on what I've heard, is that basically the change in, for example, the Republican Party, it was in danger, and what was used was the Red Scare in the 50s that we talked about, that organized people of a religious mindset under one banner, and it became kind of like the party charge. They became the standard bearers and then overtook it. How do you fix that? I don't know. Well, we've had so much damage done in a decade, 2-decade period in the middle of the last century, because if you look at where atheists and freethinkers were publicly at the end of the 19th century, when you had people like Robert Greene Ingersoll, who were he gave the keynote address for the Republican National Party. He was known as the great agnostic, debated preachers, gave lectures out in the open on the problems with the Bible and things like that. And then it became kind of taboo to talk about, we don't want to talk about religion and politics because we want to have nice, peaceful dinners. This is. I'm gonna nitpick with a minor rant for a second, and it's gonna let some of my political leanings fly. But it's about the mindset here. I've come under fire, as have a number of other atheists, that have been identified as new atheists as being too outspoken or too confrontational, by a group of people that have been labeled accommodationists. To me, the accommodationists, the let's all get along and have a big tent that's currently happening in this secular schism that I've labeled, they're the same type of people that made talking about religion and politics taboo. Let's just keep the peace and have a nice quiet dinner party rather than actually discussing things that are real, things that matter. Let's not have any conflict. When it's conflict that actually helps the world change, it's the struggle that helps the world change.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Seeking this dull gray medium is just so patently offensive to me. And I'll tell you this, that while I do tend to vote Democratic, I don't always vote that way, but I think that the reason that the Democrats lost the House, and they're doing predictably what PZ and others said they would do, is because there are too many people in the Democratic Party that were elected with an accommodationist mindset of, we don't want to ruffle too many feathers, let's see what we can do without losing our positions, and that's why they lost them. I think what we need is Democrats with sacks who are actually willing to do what they say, because I think you'll find that a lot of Democrats aren't ultra-liberal fiscally and socially. This broad spectrum encompasses a lot of different views within a particular label, Democrat, Republican, whatever. And I think you'll find the same thing on the Republican side, that there are some, perhaps many, who would not necessarily fit into that narrow little box. But we have, if anything, the poison that's been taking over is this accommodationist idea of, let's seek the least common denominator in everything. It irks the crap out of me.
Well, that's just one form of poison.
Why can't we all just get along type of thing?
Yeah,
that's one form
I'll tell you why
of
we can't
poison.
get along, because some people are wrong.
Exactly. And
this
cult
of
and you have
personality.
to stand up for your principles. Otherwise, constant compromise gets nobody anywhere, really.
Yeah.
Let me leave you with one thought here and see what you think of this. I don't know that this is true or not, but it's an idea, and that is that the religious people in the Republican Party, they are religious. One of the things that they need is a feeling that they're being taken care of, and with them, of course, it's God that they feel takes care of them. On the other side, as far as the liberals go, and once again, we're painting a broad brush here, but I think there may be that same need there, the need to feel as if they're being taken care of. Now, with them, it's not God; it's government.
There may be something to that.
I think there's some truth to what you're saying. Yes.
I don't know how much truth there is to it, but there may be something along those lines.
There have been some studies recently. I don't have any names, but that identify kind of liberal and conservative values, and there's a huge overlap between the two of them.
Right.
But there's a couple values that the priorities are different.
Yeah.
And I wish I had more to give you on that, but it'd be worth looking that up, because the differences are pretty small. Really, we're sort of all human at the core.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's kept us from clearly identifying exactly what the differences are, so that we might be able to make progress on them, is this idea, this live and let live idea of we don't want to talk too much about the differences between us. We want to pretend that we're already on the same page, when in fact, if we noticed that we weren't on the same page, we could correct it and maybe get more people on the same page. But I'm just kind of guessing at this point, because I'm not advocating a utopia, and I don't think that
There's
it's
a
realistic
lot of sausage
goal.
making in politics, right? Where you don't necessarily want to see how it's made.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for calling, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your opinions and your commentary. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
We're going to roll the bones here. We got about 8 minutes or 9 minutes left in the show, and this call may be very quick. I don't know. John in London.
Hi, Matt. We spoke over the email. Do you remember me?
Yeah, didn't I say in the email that the conversation was over?
Yeah, you said that I didn't have any proof and evidence to justify my Christianity.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not that; it's that you reject my evidence. But I'll grant you this and say, what proof and evidence do you have that atheism is accurate and correct?
Didn't I answer this in the email to you, that your question is nonsensical because atheism doesn't have a burden of proof? It is the rejection of claims that haven't met their burden of proof. Your question is nonsensical.
Yeah, atheism is the lack of belief in something.
Yeah, but what proof and evidence do you have?
Okay, I don't know how many other ways I can explain this.
I lack the belief because I know what's inside my head.
I don't know how else I can explain this, but let's imagine that I have a box here, and Don claims that there is a unicorn in this box, and I say I don't believe him. I don't need any proof or evidence that my position is true. My position is validated by the fact that he hasn't presented any evidence for his claim. And when I open the box and look inside, I don't see this. And so then he tells me that it's an invisible unicorn. And I mentioned it wouldn't fit in this box. And he says, no, it's an invisible miniature unicorn. Well, I don't feel it. Well, it's also intangible. Oh, well, how do you know it's there? Well, because it speaks to me. Okay, that's all nonsense. He's made a claim, and he's failed to provide rational evidence for it. My disbelief is justified by that.
Okay, Matt, I'll grant you that. But the invisible unicorn in your imaginary box is not an ideology like atheism is. So what proof and evidence do you have that atheism is accurate?
You're done. You're done, John. You're done. I can't explain it. I explained it in email. I explained it here. We are on a shortened scope. There's no way I'm going to waste time explaining things like that. It's not an ideology. Atheism isn't a dogma. It's not an ideology. It's not a worldview. It is nothing more than a single position on a single issue. If you believe that gods exist, you are a theist. If you do not believe, you are an atheist. Everything else that would be considered ideological is separate, which is why atheists can be libertarians, Green Party, Republican, Democrat, whatever. It's why atheists could be pro-life, pro-choice, whatever. None of those things are derived from atheism. Atheism doesn't tell you anything at all about what you should do. It tells you what it is that you do not believe. I do not believe the claims that gods exist. I'm sorry that you cannot wrap your head around the burden of proof, epistemology, where and how we determine what evidence should or shouldn't be considered valid and useful. I'm absolutely sorry that you can't do that, but I have no other way to explain it to you, which we've done in email and on 2 or 3 shows now. And you've come with, oh, people can drink poisons just like it says in Mark 16. Well, first of all, Mark 16, 9 through 20 is most likely a forgery, and if you do a little research, you'd find that out. Besides the fact that it's asinine to say that you'll know these people because they'll be able to handle snakes and not die, and drink poisons and not die, and that they'll cast out devils in my name, and this is how you'll know them. If you actually go and research, those verses do not exist in the oldest and best manuscripts of Mark. But even if they did, even if they're valid, even if they've been there from the beginning, and you know somebody who drank some poison and didn't die, that doesn't mean that the cause of their not dying was a God who's making this statement true. It's asinine. And you're done, John. You don't get on anymore, ever. Jennifer in Kokomo, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
Riled up.
As always, that's what happens when you watch this show.
It's getting hot in here. What you got for us today?
Okay, well, basically, I just kind of wanted to make a comment of what happened to me last night. It's my son's birthday, so I'm always then forced to spend some time with my family. It's been kind of difficult for me because me being atheist, I definitely don't support it. So I'm trying to change the conversation so I can teach them about skeptical thinking. So I decided to have a conversation about science and about theories. And what had happened was, instead of them supporting science and theories, they made jokes. They literally said that science is something that comes out of people's asses.
Who made jokes? I'm not quite following.
We had a birthday party for my son, and it was my mother and then her two friends.
Oh, so your
who are all involved in the medical
family?
field.
Okay.
They're all involved in the medical field?
Yes.
And they think that science is just something people pull out of their butts.
Oh yeah. And I was trying
That's
to
a head
explain to them
scratcher.
the basics.
Have you
what
reported
a
them to the
theory
licensing
is.
bureau for the medical industry that they work for?
And they're dependent on science to treat their patients. But for some reason, this doesn't come together. And, this is why I feel like I'm so passionate about being a skeptical thinker, because these people are voting. These people have great influence, and I think, especially being in the Midwest, that this is a normal way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I empathize.
I don't understand how somebody can be. I mean, when you say they're in the medical profession, obviously we're not talking about doctors.
No, they're nurses.
Okay, but still, I mean, I have a great deal of respect for nurses. Do they think that the scientific knowledge that we've gained about the human body is something people just pulled out of their butts? I mean, when somebody prescribes, when somebody comes in and they need epinephrine. Why do they think it works? Is it just magic and coincidence that epinephrine will prevent somebody from going into anaphylactic shock?
I don't know. What I would have liked for them to do is that, what they could have said is like, Jennifer, I don't understand. But instead, I was wrong, and I was laughed at. Instead of, the conversation trying to be continued so people can try to understand, they shut me down, and I was a joke.
I wonder if they accept medical science but reject other scientific theories that they don't comprehend. Things like, for example, dark matter and dark energy is something that to lots of people looks like it's something that they just pulled out of their butt. And so for things that are a little too vast and beyond their ken, it may be that their inability to comprehend it and their ignorance about the subject in general puts them in a position where the only response that they can give is to say, well, people just, they're just making this up. Because I think that if you, for example, evolution is one thing that I would imagine that they're probably scoffing at.
Oh, you can't even have a conversation about evolution with my family.
Well,
but the solution, though, is that if they're accepting medical science but rejecting other things because they can't quite wrap their head around it, it might be a valid tactic to demonstrate to them exactly how evolution plays into medical science, how we watch microorganisms evolve in order to develop vaccines, etc.
Well, there's a topic called Darwinian medicine, and we were fortunate enough to hear a lecture on it. But Scientific American has covered it, and I believe there's a couple books on the subject. But it talks about how you can understand so much about maladies and disease from taking an evolutionary viewpoint of how we got to where we are and why the plumbing isn't working right, or why certain microbes are able to defeat our antibiotics or these sorts of things. And that may be something that they will grow as caretakers by learning about this, but it could be a way of
appealing to their knowledge in some way.
Yeah, and there may be people who are just, I'm sorry to say, unreachable. And unfortunately, as much as I'd like to continue, we are now completely out of time. The show's over in like 25 seconds.
Okay.
So thanks very much for calling.
Thank you so much, man.
And
that was a great show. So
please
I
call
really
back another
appreciate
time. Thanks a lot to the crew. They're listed up on the screen, particularly Joe Rhodes, who is leaving us. Thanks so much for years of dedicated service to bring the show to millions. And there will be no show next week. Sorry about the late notice, but we'll see you in 2 weeks.